is a total and complete dedication to a cause, activity, or desire. When you make a commitment, it means you have a responsibility, obligation, and duty to align your choices and behaviors in a way that supports the commitment you have made. It is a matter of walking your talk, doing what you say you will do when you say you will do it. Making and keeping commitment teaches others that you can be trusted. In the process, commitment builds your self-trust and self-esteem, which are cornerstones and building blocks of self-love and self-acceptance.
And welcome to New Beginnings Podcast with Michelle. We are so happy you're here with us. It's the end of February, and we couldn't finish our episodes of relationship and well-being without having a conversation about it. So today we are conversing with a few ladies on marriage and relationships, and we are going to talk a little bit about what we've learned during the 3 weeks we had. Yes, 3 weeks of understanding family of origin, understanding communication, and then looking at the 3 areas of trust, intimacy, and commitment, how these things play out in our everyday lives. I have with me today Miss Beth Stiers. You should know her by now. She has been a marriage counselor and mental health coach for 30 plus years now, and she shared some information with us this month on relationships, and we are here to talk a little bit more about it. And I have 2 of my good friends, Sam.
Hello.
And Jill.
Hello.
So these 2 ladies, I normally bounce things off of them when we're in the gym. And we have lots of conversations and we learn from each other. So it was just fitting for them to be with me today and talk a little bit with Miss Beth Stiers today. A little more, and for us to even learn more about relationship and marriage and how we relate to each other on the whole. So these ladies are married.
Yes, we are.
Yep.
Yes, they all are, including me. And we are by no way means necessary perfect. Get that straight. So we want you to understand that through the opportunity of learning from each other, we can do better in relationships. And it does not have to only be in marriage. It also can be in friendship. All right, and learning to be able to listen and understand what somebody's saying to you and not feel offended by what somebody has done based on their background and things of that nature. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So I'll go right back to the first episode we had on relationship, and we talked about communication.
Yes,
so
we
let's dive in a little bit about that again, Miss Beth, and share give them a snippet of what it was about.
Just the fact that we have to be able to communicate with one another in order to have a good relationship or have a relationship.
Yes.
And communication can come in many different forms.
Yeah.
Because it can be body language, it can be verbal, it can affect the person we're talking to, and they can affect us. And perception is another big one that can come with communication, because we don't understand always what the other person is communicating to us, or they don't know what we're communicating to them.
Yeah. That right there, I just something just came up in my head, you know. So I'm from the Caribbean. If you didn't know that, now you know. You should know that by now. But the way I was taught and brought up, things that my parents taught me, things I learned in school, our learning scheme was a little different than what it is in the U.S. And sometimes I might draw a blank as to what is being told to me, and sometimes people draw a blank on what I'm telling them. They'll be like, what did she just say?
Yes.
Or, you know, they'll be like, okay, I don't know what you just said, but I'll just do it.
Right. Well, and I teach 6th grade, so I teach
Yes.
11 and 12-year-olds, and a big thing when we teach communication is tone versus message. I say it from day one. We say it a lot. As a parent of a 6 and almost 8-year-old, I model it, and the big thing I have talked a lot about this year with my kids is apologizing when you overstep. This year's kids especially, we're learning that apologies are strength, apologies are power. Those icky feelings when we've offended someone, your perception, to your point, you deciding you didn't hurt their feelings doesn't make their feelings not hurt. You
Right,
saying words
that's
and
correct.
people's reaction to them are their narrative and their story. And if they're offended and you didn't mean to, then just go, it wasn't my intention, I apologize. You've walked it all the way back. So tone versus message is big in my classroom.
Oh,
Very good.
okay. Jill, I have a Bible verse that we talked about in the series. Ephesians 5:21. Submit yourself one to another in the fear of God. And that we talked about people thinking when you say fear of God, it means to be afraid. We also talk about it from the perspective of when we say submit ourselves one to another, it should be husband and wife. Submit yourselves one to another.
To each other.
To
Yes.
each other. And not just the wife alone submitting.
Mhm.
Tell me what you think about that.
Marriage from the beginning, and I had a good friend tell me this when I first got married. She said that marriage at the beginning, I've been married 16 years, so I think a lot of marriage can be a power struggle at first. And I think that goes on for quite some time until somebody, I don't, for lack of a better word, I think gives in.
Mm-hmm.
Where they know, and I don't really think it's giving in, I think it's learning and maturing and recognizing your strengths and your weaknesses in a marriage. And I kind of feel like, I don't know, I don't like the word submit because I have a,
Right.
It's a heavy word.
it's a heavy word and I don't like it, but I think submit has different meanings, and I think in a marriage, it means two people submitting together, agreeing, not necessarily agreeing, but seeing the other's point and understanding it and acknowledging how each other feels, but trying to understand that their way and our way. I'm working on that currently, like just trying to understand how my presentation or how I am perceived by my kids and my husband, and echoing what you say, modeling that. Because I know early in my marriage, I've always tried to be the model for my children,
Yes.
but maybe not the best partner in that way.
right.
So
Okay.
after 16 years, I'm really trying to find myself in that, because actually walking with God and having him the constant in your life makes things a lot easier than going against the grain. And I feel like that's with a marriage. I feel like that's with God. I feel like that's with friendship. But I also think that comes with age. I'm not young anymore. And I've really just tried to pull with my inner strength and trying to see where I'm good and where I can work on things. And I need to work on a lot of things, but I feel like acknowledging that and trying to do that helps. I don't know if that answered your
Right.
question, but
Definitely.
Mhm.
I guess I'm supposed to talk now.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been married 38 years, and it is still an issue for us on and off the communication and working through that. And he has a different personality than I do, and I have different personality than he does. I mean, he's more we're both firstborns, which goes back to our
Yeah.
family of origin, and so firstborns being together is kind of like not so good a lot of times because you battle. But I'm more passive, just kind of laid back. He's more concerned about everything being right and me doing the right wording, and so we really have to work on that and love each other very, very much, but it just takes a long time, and we'll do it the rest of our lives.
Learning how to fight, learning how to disagree, learning how to go, we love each other. This is about a thing, not an us.
Right.
That's taken time.
And I will tell you, there are
That's hard.
good ways to fight, if you want to call it good ways, but
Right.
they have ways that you can fight fair. And that's what needs to happen, not to bring up the past, not to dwell on certain things. But we still will have those arguments or disagreements. And if you can come to terms with those and accept that they'll be there, it will be easier if you stay in a positive note when you're going through those. And staying in the, I feel this, instead of, you did this to me.
Ah, that's huge.
Yeah.
I words instead of you words. I've
Exactly.
heard that thought process. That makes sense. Well, and circling back to, this is what I was really upset about. I teach and I do after school things, and my bandwidth by the end of a school day is done. I don't want to go home and then you look at me and talk about what's for dinner. And it's not in a go make it in the kitchen. It's just, well, what do you want to do for dinner tonight? To not have to have that conversation, for you to go, it's Wednesday, it's club day. When you walk through the door at 5:45, I'm going to have dinner thought through. Or text you and go, would you like takeout of this? So circling back after I screamed at him, circling back the next day and going, can I teach you, can I tell you my perspective, even though I rudely articulated it in that moment, has changed the last 3 weeks of my Wednesdays. True story.
Nice.
That's the
All
most
right.
recent big argument we got into, was over my mental bandwidth versus his. He works from home. I go
And-
teach, and I have our children with me in my school. So that saved the last 3 Wednesdays of my marriage.
And I will say, in 2019 on up, since the pandemic, it's been very difficult for couples too, because many people are working from home, or they're working part-time from home, and those are all new things that we didn't have before. So that means more communication or more
Has
time
to
together.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't go through a rough patch. We got more codependent.
Ah, very good.
I'm noticing
Yes.
now and walking back in healthy ways-ish, hopefully.
Uh-huh.
Taking walks in the park by myself.
I like to think of it as more connected rather than codependent.
I like that. It's a healthy spin.
Yeah. Stay in that positive.
I love that, yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, I like how we address the fact that family of origin, which was our second series, what we spoke of, understanding that yes, the place in which you were born in the number of persons in your family versus girl or boy
Mhm.
versus
Culture.
culture or born 5 years apart, because we said
Right.
if it has
a
a
new
family,
family.
it's a new family. If you have a kid 5 years apart, because that's the same thing happening in my household. We have one kid, it's 21 this year, and then we have another kid who is 9. And the 21-year-old is in college versus the 9-year-old is at home.
Mhm.
And he is like, I want another baby sister or brother. Nope, not from me. Not from me. But I have to understand, in communicating with him and the relationship with him, I am the playmate.
Yes, you are.
Oh.
Mhm.
So I have to find time to play. So we are recording now. I promise we're going to go to the park
Yeah.
because I'm the playmate.
Right.
Yes. Mhm.
Never thought I'll be a playmate at this age,
Mhm.
but I would do it for him,
Right.
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 right?
Mhm.
So and it comes to the marriage with husband and wife now. Where would we compromise, or where would we, how would it balance each other out in decision making? How do we play that part as a husband and wife? Can you share
Okay.
some on that for me?
Yeah, communication wise, first we're going to need to talk it through and get both sides and both opinions, and then determine which one is going to better fit our situation. And I can tell when we first were looking for it, well, not first, but we were looking for a house. I wanted this certain house, and my husband was, that one might be a little tight in our budget. And so since we are Christian, and then I was like, okay, I really want that house, but I'll go with what you say. And sure enough, we are in a house that is much better for us, a beautiful house, one I would never have thought of. But he said, I'm just not comfortable. And then I said, you make this decision because you are the head of the household. So he did, and it was a much better decision than what I would have made. So that you have to talk it through.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing, because I was not a happy camper when he didn't want to do that house. So I had to get over myself. So
Yes, Jill?
What was the question?
Deviation of tasks and how that conversation kind of looks, I think.
Well, I think I have 2 daughters, both teenagers, and my husband's from a family of all boys. So he doesn't really have, or didn't really have, still kind of doesn't have the perspective of raising girls, which is neither here nor there really.
but it is.
Other than, I say
It
that,
is.
now I'm gonna jump back, because you know what, you're right. I'm correcting myself in my mind. The sensitivity, the knowing what to say, when to say it. Not necessarily. I'm not really about sugarcoating. I'm more of I'm going to be very honest with you, especially with my girls. Well, my husband too, and not sugarcoat things. I'm not a believer of that. But as far as I feel like I jump around your question here. So as far as tasks and things like that, my husband and I we're very good coworkers. We're both very task oriented. We're both, this is the goal. This is what we're going to do. You're going to pick someone up from softball. You're going to pick someone up from work. We're very good at that. We're very good coworkers. As far as I used power struggle because my husband we're always in a power struggle. Not so much anymore, but it really used to be a thing for us. I just feel like finding our strengths and our weaknesses in each other is something that I'm still working on. I feel like men tend to, or maybe it's just my particular situation, don't really maybe I shouldn't say men. I should say in my particular situation, I feel like there's no I'm going to see your side of it.
That's men.
Okay. It's my way or the highway. I don't want to label men because I could go down that rabbit hole really quick. But
I will say that it tends to be men. It could be there's one in each marriage. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It could be the female, it could be the male, but typically it is the male.
Yeah.
And they have a goal and they're going to get that goal done.
Yes.
And females have all these different ideas and goals. They're going to get them all done, but they're not focused on the exact one immediately.
And it's the communication about that,
Yes.
what you see your goal is and what I see my goal is, and that's just something that I just feel like probably is something that's just a work in progress the whole time. It's got to be, because and then I feel like when you start getting that understanding between each other, it just kind of flows. It makes things a little bit easier, and I feel like once you let that control go and once you let that
Well, you brought up something also, the fact that when you first got married, you had more maybe conflicts, and that's better than the arguments, but the conflicts. And as you mature, I think we get to the point where, okay, what is really important and what is not, and you get to learn that person's ways, and so you are more accepting, or you should probably be more accepting. They're more accepting of you.
and really, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
And not feel because I think my biggest thing, and it still is I'm submitting to you. Your bad behavior or whatever I feel like is not okay. If I give in, then I'm letting your behavior be okay. And so really focusing on more of the understanding, that's just the way that you are, and me being more accepting of that versus you're getting away with a behavior that I don't agree with or I don't feel is right?
Right.
Because I'm very much like, I want to call you out on that. I want not necessarily in a mean way, but I don't like the way that you're talking to me. I don't like the way you're treating me. I don't like the way that you side with your mom. I don't like the way that you disown my feelings. But maybe just recognizing that's just kind of who he is,
Right.
his upbringing. Just trying to learn all of that.
Something else I would add is, and this is not to be upset with men at all or anything, but capacity-wise, sometimes they have a harder time when they are focused on one goal. They can't switch back and forth as quickly as females. And I think that's just why God made us different, so that we could balance each other. And I know my husband balances me because I get too busy with different things and he'll slow me down. Or I might have to say, come on along with me, so to get him to kind of do something. We just did a remodel and it was kind of like, come on. And then he would go, slow down. And so, those kinds of things. And we also have learned, we don't work well together.
Yeah.
So if you don't work well together, don't do that.
Right.
Amen.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and forming habits, and my husband and I have been married 16 years also, but together since we were in 8th grade. So we've been together over 25. And I used to get so mad at him leaving for a trip. In my opinion, we should be able to go, we leave in 3 hours, ready, break. But then I'm mad at him because he doesn't do the things I needed him to do the way I needed him to do it. But then when I go all the way back, he wouldn't have known how I needed him to do it. So now we make lists together for almost everything. His responsibilities, my responsibilities, what we know we need to get before we leave. It helps me to be organized because I am the bandwidth of the two of us. He is a very good soldier. He's a very good soldier in most things. There are elements that it is his superpower and I can't touch it. He bill pay organization, he's the king. But mostly the doer of the things and the organization of the things is my lane because I'm good at it and he's not. But he's good at go get the car ready, pack the car, get the kids situated with their drinks and snacks and iPads and chargers. He's great at it and I'm not. So knowing what I need to do first to help him to be successful so we can go ready break has taken years of practice and forgiveness. So it's literally just time. And then what are we good at? He's not good at showering the kids because I need to wash my daughter's long curly hair in a certain way. So he does dishes after dinner while I shower the kids. And it's just a well-oiled machine. We joke all the time that we are okay apart, but together we are pretty unstoppable between both of our skill sets. There's very little we're not good at together.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Now, not always. And it's not always great.
No,
Right.
Literally a
but
month
you have
ago.
to learn to develop those
Yes.
too. And it takes quite a long time to learn to develop those. Still, like I said, at 38 years, we're still doing some of that. So
That's reassuring
yeah.
to hear that 38 years in, it's still a constant molding and shaping and back and forth and mistakes and healing.
But it's a lot different. We don't have kids now. Kids are gone. And so we just deal with each other and it's a lot easier that way. You're not having to do the schedule you were talking about. You're not having to run around. We did all that. So being coaches, doing other things.
Yeah.
So, we, in that episode, we had this saying from George Bernard Shaw, if you cannot get rid of the family skeleton, you may as well make it dance. I love it too. And I think we just described that.
I love that.
Because, yes, and I see it, when you said the word submit, I know submit is not a word you like.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And now I know that.
I don't
Because you
either.
said it.
Yeah.
And I realize when you talk about I am submitting to his way, I could feel the negativity when it's not really submitting, it's understanding.
Right. Yeah.
So knowing
Accepting.
accepting, yes. And knowing the background of what somebody feels is really important. Because if you said to me, I'm like, submit to submit. It's just a word. Because in my culture, that's just a word, submit.
But it triggers some people.
But
Right.
it triggers some
It
people.
triggers.
Like certain words say in America, it's trigger some things, and I'm thinking, the things you'll get triggered by, I am nowhere. Like, seriously, that triggered you? Like, okay,
Right.
And for me, it's like, but then some words I say, people think I'm bringing down hell. Like, but I didn't say anything.
Right.
But then when you learn the background of it or the meaning of it to that individual, it plays a huge role in understanding why they reacted how they reacted.
Correct.
Taking time to do that is a lot.
Yes, it is.
Sometimes I don't have patience for that. I'm being serious.
Right.
Sometimes I really don't have patience for that, especially when you have goals or you have tasks you want to complete. I'm like, we need to cut the chase here and get to the point.
Right.
If we need to backtrack after that and go over it and, reassure that, no, I'm not angry at you. I'm just trying to explain this. We need to get this done. Now we can talk about it. That's me. It doesn't work all the time because then my husband will be like, I don't want to talk to you right now.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
And I understand that. Versus I'm the one who wants to deal with it right now.
Right.
I want to deal with it right now. And it's taking me time to be like, okay, Michelle,
Yes.
breathe, walk away, don't talk about it right now.
And I will give you a suggestion for that. And one of the suggestions is that I tell people to have a notebook. And when you want to talk about something and maybe he wants to pull away or doesn't want to, then you write down your concern, your upset in that book. Then let him have that little notebook, and then he can write down I usually say within 24 hours what his answer is to what you're saying. And I have some people that just lay a notebook on the counter and say, I wrote something in the notebook. That way the kids don't have to hear it when you're talking. Also, and then you also can maybe get your answer. It takes out that tone of anger
Right.
and pulls out that intensity. So
Makes you get to the point too.
yes, it
'Cause I
does. You have
talk
to think through it.
Yes, be intentional with what you write. Teenagers, one of the PDs we went to as teachers recommended that for if you're struggling with your teenager to have a notebook, a feelings notebook, and then they can write down what they're feeling and pass it. What you said, and it allows girl dads. I've got a couple of non-moms in the picture. It's dads raising daughters, and I've had them come to me like, help me. This is like an alien language. I don't understand it. And so, the notebooks helped in a couple cases. So I like that.
So we looked at in the last episode Philippians 2:4, and it says, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. And I think that kind of summed up what we were talking about with relationship and communicating. Because if we are unable to communicate what's going on in here, we can't really help each other, or you can't learn what you need help with. And but as well as we need to want to help in the situation, and want to listen. And the three things that we talked about under that concept was that of trust, commitment, and intimacy. And trying to understand that when we do this, when we communicate with each other, how these three concepts play a part in just being able to be open, I guess. But we talked about trust, commitment, and intimacy under a certain context.
Help me out. What do you mean?
For us to be able to implement trust, commitment, or intimacy, we have to be on board with each other. And if we don't want to do that, or if we're angry with each other, or if we're not being able to want to communicate with each other and not seek help, we can't trust
No.
or commit.
Right.
Or be intimate. I ain't no intimate with nobody. I'm sorry. I'm good at putting up a wall real quick. Very quick. I can put that wall up real fast. I'm a good builder. My father's a woodworker, okay? So I know how to build some walls and build some doors, lock that door tight.
Yeah. But you have to understand also that the other person is going to shut down when you build those walls. So as they shut down, then that makes it even worse for you. That notebook does kind of help with some of that as to kind of open that up. I also noticed that, and this kind of goes off that subject, but we are so busy we don't take the time to listen or the time to communicate. And here, at least in the United States, it's that way. My daughter lives in Africa, and I've mentioned that before, and her husband, when we go to visit them, that I come back and I'm much more peaceful for 2 or 3 weeks, because when you are over there, they're just slower in doing things. They don't have the pressure. They have other pressures. They have pressures of getting food. They have pressures of, living, clean drinking water. But that in order to do that, they do know how to, let's sit down and just talk. And I think we've lost that as an art too. I did that growing up. We would go on Sundays to my grandparents and just sit in their yard and talk all afternoon. Okay, I was a kid. It was like, okay, are we done with this? But now that when I think about it, it was really, really helpful to learn about that and to have that understanding of what it's like to communicate, what it's like to have disagreements and work those out together and still be a family and love each other.
I think I've been doing a lot of love language research and talking about love languages, and it's funny because in the beginning of our relationship, I would write my husband cards for Valentine's Day and just write about how great he is and how much I love him and how he's healed me and blah, blah, blah. And I'm watching him read it and I'm wanting this reaction because I wrote my soul to this man.
Exactly.
And he's awkwardly watching me watch him read it. And he's reading it and he reads the entire thing and I'm waiting for my treat and my good girl. And he's like, it's really nice.
Exactly.
Neat. Thank you. So I've learned that my love language, sometimes I overwhelm him. I love bomb him. I'm like, you're just so handsome. You look so good today. Your hair's great. Thank you. So that's not his love language.
No. Yours is affirmation.
Yes. I'm a people pleaser. I'm working on it. But his love language to me, like this morning, he ran downstairs super early and he comes back with an Amazon box. And he bought me a heated blanket because we just got our kids heated blankets for Christmas. And so he bought me, that's his love language. It's how he's, so that's been a fun journey to kind of laugh. But I think there are love languages when you're arguing also. My tone, and sometimes I listen to respond and not listen to take in his message. So I wanted to give you a check on that one. But my tone sometimes is nasty and it triggers him.
Oh, sure.
When my tone turns condescending, he wants it. It's not a functional conversation anymore. So he's learned to tell me about it, and I've learned to check it without ego. Learning to check it without ego. It doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah. I know when we were first married, my parents were teachers too. And so they taught me. They didn't yell, they didn't scream, they didn't do any of that. And then my husband would get really upset with me and I would just melt. And so I always felt sorry for him afterward now that I understand that's what I was doing. But his family was definitely, let's just fight it out basically, or let's get it done and over with. And mine was, let's talk it out. So those are different styles and neither one is wrong. It's just they're different styles. And so I, and again of our marriage, didn't understand that either, even though with what I do, I should understand those things. But when it's yourself and your own marriage, your own family, we can't practice those things. So we have to be ourselves at our homes.
So when you stated, well, let me use a different word. Let me try to change my wording. Last night, my husband said, he was talking to his cousin, and he said, I really like when we go home by my father in Trinidad, and my father and mother in Trinidad, because he likes to talk and, he liked to reminisce and talk about all sorts of things. And he said he reminded me so much of my granddad. And I was like, oh, look at that connection. I didn't pick that up. But now as you said that, connecting the two, we do need to start talking more and just sitting down and, just relating stories. My father loves telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
And just the idea of just changing the tone of things
Right.
and relaxing. And even if my parents married 54 years this year, and yeah, they're both sides. Daddy's the quiet one, mommy is the rowdy one.
Right.
But they learn how to work things together. They still get mad at each other
Right.
up to this week, but it's understanding each other, and
Right.
he has his ways, I have mine, and I'm like, but both of y'all born like 3 days apart. Y'all the same, They're pretty much the same, but they have different ways of doing things. And
Right.
family origin, he's the firstborn versus mommy's probably about the third or fourth or fifth. Both of them have big families, but you could see when you start talking about these different things or characters that can impact who an individual is.
Right.
It really helps you to understand who that individual is.
Right. And I think Jill said it earlier, but I come from a family of 2 girls, and my husband is of 3 boys. So the parents had to parent differently
Yes.
because girls don't normally push back as much. They're going to be more sneaky. They're going to boys are going to push back, and they're going to get in trouble more in that way. And parents have to deal with that.
Right.
So mine was more quiet, and his was more boisterous. But that's just the way they had to do it.
Right.
So and we do that same thing with our families. And if you have a boy girl, then there's a whole different dynamic there.
So, Jill, I'm gonna hit you this one.
Um,
How would you?
It's the cackle. I'm having gym PTSD.
I know.
She's gonna give us something real hairy.
A lot of reps.
Okay.
Heavyweight.
What do you consider triggers you emotionally? Now, don't cry. Tell me, what would you think emotionally triggers you when either having a conversation with your husband or in just relationship wise?
I think relationship wise, with my husband, with my family, with just about anything, it's validation. I am very much a person that needs validated. Not that I'm right, but I'm heard. And I kind of have grown up. I don't know that my husband doesn't really validate me. I don't think he knows how to validate. He comes from a very strong Italian family that there's just
Is it all boys?
all boys.
Okay.
All boys. He's got all boy cousins, maybe except 2 girls, maybe.
Wow.
So there's a lot of testosterone. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of just stuff. And I come from we're both middle children as well. So so I have 2 brothers and a sister. So there's kind of a mix there. And so I think validation's huge. I really feel like, with my daughters, I've made it a big issue raising them, listening and making sure they know that I'm listening, but I'm not always going to agree with you, but I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to validate how you feel, because to me that builds trust. It shows commitment to your child. And I'm actually pretty good with it with my husband too, when I'm not mad at him, which it's 50-50, 60-40, 70-30. But again, I think when you validate somebody, it helps, and I try to do that with people. I try to do that. I try to walk a mile in their shoes. I try to relate, even though I may not understand. But that does trigger me emotionally. If you're not hearing me, I just want you to hear me. You have to tell me I'm right, but you need to hear me. And I think that's true for everybody. I don't think you can go wrong with that.
How about you, Sam?
Agree. Retweet on all of that. Definitely validation. I want you to see me, and I just need you to appreciate how hard I'm constantly working for our family, for our house, and be a teammate in the way that shows me your appreciation. So making the kids lunches. Hey kids, you guys are gonna take your lunch from home today, right? Let me go do that for you. The acts of service piece of, I see you're running a mile from the second you open your eyes. Let me support you how best I can, even if it's not all the way correct. So he's done a really good job hearing, and he'll go like, but he wants his too. He'll go, hey, I made the kids lunches, and he wants me to know that the things we've discussed in the past are he's working on it.
Yes.
Yes. So validation's huge, and just being chosen. I want you to want me. I want to know I'm where I should be. Like, make me feel like it's important that I'm here. It's not just anybody in these shoes, it's me.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. My
How
turn.
about you? Yeah.
Mine would probably be maybe acceptance. That I'm accepted, and what my opinion is accepted. Not like Jill, doesn't have to be right, but it is my opinion, and it's okay to have that opinion, and be able to at least let you think about that opinion.
Right.
You don't have to follow it, but it is mine.
Yes. Yeah. I would say I want to be heard as well, and you don't have to agree with me.
Just let it hold space.
Yes.
Just let my opinion take up space.
Because it matters.
Yes.
It does matter. One thing we could also add to that is, as individuals, help understand what your partner or friend strength is, or their strengths, and try to look at that at, when we're really angry with them, I still like you. I like you, Sam, because Sam, you do good. You make me smile, but you need to do this.
Yeah.
Still look at the person's strengths, not to look at negative things. Try
Right.
to bring out, always look at the positive of the individual. That is really hard for me.
Right.
Responsive versus reactive.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is very hard for me. I ain't no perfect person, but I could tell you what's wrong. I could give you all the weaknesses real quick too, and that's not good. But I am working on trying to look at people's strengths and understand that everybody has a value, and everybody brings something to the table. Even your kids, they bring
Right.
something to the table, so that we can be able to understand, okay, what do we all bring to the table, and how we can all go together forward. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
And that maybe starts with modeling, I have value, and I'm working on
Yes.
that one. That's been a big one for me this last year too, is I have to teach my daughter that she deserves a seat at any table she wants to sit at.
Right.
And my mom's mental health and depression and things is, she's just now realizing in her late 50s, early 60s that that's mental health, that depression, not everybody lives there.
Right.
You're allowed to kind of visit, but you don't buy property. So I'm having to kind of heal mine and forge a path. So my baby girl knows that she deserves any table she wants to sit at, and do not let people drag you through the mud. And don't be a pleaser to the point that it affects your life negatively. And I'm learning that at 38 and a half.
That's all right. One of the things that we also look at was forgiveness.
Yes.
So if we want to hear and look at the positive things or strengths of an individual, we have to also be able to forgive them for some of their weaknesses. And that's also a step thing. It's never something you can do, oh, right, I forgive you, and move on. It comes back to haunt you sometimes.
And if you're triggered by the same things and the person is either unwilling or unable to change those things, you're signing up for a life of chaos and sadness when maybe your expectations of them need to shift a little bit. What they're
Right.
capable of in your life maybe needs to shift, because if you're running into the same wall for years and you're still mad about it, you're not thinking about it any differently.
Right, so you have to self-reflect and figure out what your self-value and self-worth is. That was one of the things in the
Right.
last one we did, self-value and understanding that I'm worth it. I am worth something. I'm worth more than just money or, things, and value yourself and understand who you are. So once you value yourself, you would have the opportunity to value others, because then you're going to see the good in others.
And attract people of similar character.
Yeah.
I
Right.
think.
And we're going to have negative around us no matter what.
Yes.
So the more we can think toward the positive and be positive, our relationships are going to be positive, and our communication is going to be more positive
Yeah.
if we can stay that way. And forgiveness, we're going to, yes, if we can forgive, that's what we need to do. That's what the Bible tells us to do, and to forgive. Jesus would forgive, but it doesn't mean we forget everything.
Mhm.
We talked last time about abusive situations.
Yes.
Because we are the temple, God's temple, so we need to make sure that we are following that and not letting someone hurt us over and over and over. But we can forgive them at some point, hopefully,
Mhm.
for some of those things. Doesn't mean we have to be around them, but,
True.
and I think we talked last time to make sure you get help with that if you have an issue, so,
Yes.
with that.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too. Is you have an obligation to at least work on your healing journey. You can't control what happened. You have an obligation to not lean on it and use it as a hall pass to continue the cycles of abuse.
Right.
You don't get to go, well, my childhood was bad, so I hit because I was hit. You don't get that. You
Right.
have an obligation to work on it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, as we wrap up, I want to thank you, ladies, for coming on here at New Beginnings Podcast. And I like the conversation. We had a good one. I've learned a lot this month about relationships, and what I know for me to continue, I would like to get help to just be able to learn more, to understand even my own self, to move forward in relationships.
Right.
And we should not be afraid to do that.
Mhm.
That is something that we need to learn, especially if we want to be better people.
Mhm.
You know, to be able to understand who you are, you have to get help, because as you said before earlier, you're the counselor and you had certain things going on in your home and your marriage, and
Mhm.
you don't check that. You're not the counselor at your house,
Right.
right? So you need somebody else to help you. You always need a coach.
Mhm.
You always need somebody else to kind of like give you the bullseye view of what they see going on in here, because you're not seeing the bullseye view. You in the mess.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly.
Right? So, get help. If you need help, get the help, because it is necessary for your own well-being at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And you want to be able to help others, and if you want to do that, you have to get help. Yeah?
And keeping all of your dark and stormy feelings inside just reaffirms that you're the only one going through it. And then when you're
Right.
willing and able to seek out other people's, walks of life, we're very similar. We talk about that at the
Yes.
gym all the time.
Yeah.
If we're willing to just talk to people and get their experiences, we're going through a lot of the same stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And closing in is just how that mental health journey just spirals out.
Yeah. Thank you again, ladies. This is New Beginnings Podcast with Michelle, and today we had Beth, Sam, and Jill with me. I want to say my affirmation, my year affirmation again. I am willing to change. I am willing and ready to change. I am willing and ready to change my relationship with people for a better.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So thank you again for listening in. We will see you guys again soon. Maybe I might have them on again next month. You never know. Since next month is Women's Month, so we'll see. We'll see.
Love that.
Yeah. All right. This is New Beginnings Podcast with Michelle. Have a great day and a great week. God bless. Bye bye.